So this presentation is about hybrid vigilantism, not digital as advertised. And it's a type of informal institution that combines physical and online collective action to provide security assurances to citizens. And it's interesting because it represents a citizen's empowerment. It's a form of collective action, and it uses the leverage of internet to reach global audiences. And it can also directly address issues of justice and order and security that other types of collective action can't, which I'll show later in one of the slides. Vigilantism, it emerges when citizens self-organize in order to address the inability of formal institutions to provide justice, security, and order. And in traditional vigilantism, which I think was first documented back in 1850s in the States, citizens physically expose, confront, and punish perpetrators of perceived wrongdoings. And it takes place in physical spaces like streets. Usually it's witnessed by a small number of people, and those people who are there present, they can later spread their testimonies in the form of local rumors. Targets suffer immediate physical harm or intimidation. That's the punishment. And we now also have digital vigilantism, which is different because it's played out online on social media forums and messaging applications, and it has a potential to reach large audiences. The evidence of the transgression is promoted digitally. The punishment is different. It's reputational damage, harassment, and also can lead to official sanctioning. And the role of online audience is to amplify the punishment and to provide persistent visibility and shaming through sharing. Now we have hybrid vigilantism, which combines the two. It combines the immediacy and relatability of real life transgressions with the power of digital amplification. Physical witnessing, confrontation, and punishment, they're recorded and posted online to inspire, threaten, or shame. And there's a wide spectrum of uses. This particular genre of content is usually very addictive, immersive, compelling, and entertaining. So depending on the execution, it can attract a lot of attention. The initial punishment, which is physical, gets augmented through visibility that leads to notoriety, public shaming, and harassment, and can also potentially lead to more physical punishment. So why I'm talking about hybrid vigilantism, it's because it's a vivid, real world example of what happens when formal institutions lose legitimacy or they're simply not present, and then citizens improvise their own systems of accountability. And it's a kind of grassroots civic organization. But I think in this case study that I'm going to show today, it is not as simple as that. So hybrid vigilantism can be described as bottom-up emergent social phenomenon that blends collective action, technology, and moral narratives. But it could also be seen as a problematic phenomenon, a paradox that we in our meta-modernist circles usually like to examine. It's it's a laboratory, a living experiment in how power, ethics, and technology interact, with both inspiring and troubling results. To understand more about the conditions that give rise to vigilantism, we should take a look at a broader context of sources that define norms, rules, and laws in society. And these sources can be formal or informal. Formal institutions are legitimate government institutions, and informal institutions are the ones which operate outside that realm, but still provide the basis for actions and behaviors. And interaction between what the state formally says and what people actually do in practice results in unwritten rules that can become de facto institutions. And depending on the strength of formal institutions and their effectiveness in enforcing prescribed norms or laws, the relational dynamics between the two can fall into four different categories, and that is according to the research done by Helmke and Levitsky, and they propose a two by two of how effective the formal institution is, whether it's strong or weak, and whether the informal rule reinforces or undermines the formal one. And if an informal institution complements formal without competing with it or trying to substitute it, then it's complementary. If the formal institution ignores or tolerates informal laws or norms, then it's accommodating. If it tries to replace formal, if informal institution tries to replace formal institution, then it's substitutive, and if it directly undermines it, it's considered to be competing. And vigilante groups emerge as a result of weakness or absence of formal institutions, and they take upon themselves the role of guarantors um, of security and justice. And while they promote laws of the system and are seen as complementary, they may also fall outside of legal framework, and they usually do, and may be seen to be substituting formal institution, not necessarily just complementing. Vigilantism is also a form of collective action, which is focused on crime control, social control, and defense of norms and laws. And it's a group of citizens who provide assurances to other citizens of a given established order. And compared to other types of collective action, vigilantism is the only one that addresses security and justice concerns directly without wanting to overthrow the government. And we do have the insurgency, which does address that system, but in a very subversive way. So vigilantism is probably the most extreme and effective type of collective action that can be at the same time tolerated by formal institutions. So it has that particular power if it gets it right. So I'm coming to the case study now, and um, and I'm using this Russian organization called Stopham, which was set up by one of the pro-Kremlin youth movements, and they walked a fine line between acting where public authorities are slow and unwilling, um, and being seen as complementing the government, but they also made themselves look subversive, even though their goal was to uphold norms rather than undermine them. And um, well, because they're technically operating beyond formal legal framework, they always risked being portrayed as vigilance rather than civic service. So they created a brand out of their movement, and they have a number of people, some of them trained in martial arts and prepared to fight, and they confront perpetrators of various transgressions and try to create an interesting content that they would push onto their website. And I think they have made a considerable amount of money. Some of their videos have been seen by millions of people. I think altogether something like 800 million views across all the videos that they have done. Okay, so we've seen a little bit about the style of their videos, and here is what their declared mission is, which is to reduce the illegal and antisocial behavior in major cities in Russia. I think they mainly do videos in Moscow and St. Petersburg. But I also know that they have influenced some other similar vigilantes groups internationally, almost franchising their model. And their primary targets are antisocial driving and people who feel entitled um, or even officials, Russian officials who think they can do whatever they want because of their position, and they usually approach offenders, ask them to um, remove their vehicles from the places where they're not supposed to be, and if the driver refuses, they would stick um, a large they would put a large sticker on their windshield, and then they publish this content. It used to be very regular, but I think recently it's gone down in frequency. Again, this is the anatomy of their action. So they get into small teams and patrol streets. Then they approach the driver, place a large sticker on the windshield, document the interaction. A lot of time they call the police, and the police usually works with them, and they record that as well, and then they put their videos online and create this feedback loop. And the last bit that I've got is about their cooperation with the Russian government. They're not really a grassroots movement because they emerged out of Kremlin promoted organization called Nashi, and they had some sort of informal state support, even though it's difficult to see whether it was actual funding or just tacit approval. In 2013 and 14, they received presidential grants, and I misspelled that. And they have, over the years, exposed a few powerful politicians, and as a result of that, those politicians lost their jobs. So um, they did cause quite a stir. And in 2016, there was an attempt to ban them, but that ban was later overturned, and they are free to continue what they're doing at the moment. So that would be it.